to our live broadcast, our live video chat with me. I'm Sarah of Posh Pooch Designs. Today we're going to be discussing how to read a yarn label, and they can be very, very confusing. And I know that a lot of people think that they write all that information on there to confuse you, but they really don't. It's all good information to help you. Now, if you're out there and you're watching our live video chat, have you got your coffee ready? Because it's very important to me. If we're going to have a chat, we got to have a cup of coffee. I'm going to take a sip right now. It's just a selfish plug about Posh Pooch Designs. Well, if you're out there, I've got a joke for you first before we get started. I saw this on the internet the other day. Let me read it to you. It says, "We all know wool comes from sheep. So how many sheep does it take to make a sweater?" Anybody know the answer? Comment in if you know the answer. I'll tell you the answer later. All right, let's get busy with our talk. Now, all yarn comes with a label, and they're all different. Here's one from Bernat. I don't know if you can see that label. No, it's probably too bright. But all of them come with information. This is a Bernat. This is a Hobby Lobby one, has information. You know, this is another one. There's a Downton Abbey one. It all has a bunch of crazy information. But what I decided to do is, for our video chat today, this is some yarn that I'm working with right now. It is amazing yarn, by the way. This is Red Heart Stellar. Big, thick, chunky number 6. It's the name of the color is Nova, and look at that yarn. Isn't that gorgeous? And it's got a little bit of a gold fleck going through it. I'm working on a gift for my sister. So anyway, this is the yarn that we're going to be talking about today. And I chose it because I thought the labels were nice and big, but I can see they're not really showing up very good on video. So what I did is I made a copy of the label. And as you can see, there's all kinds of crazy symbols. What does all this stuff mean? Let me set that one aside because I even made it bigger. Okay, the first thing we're going to talk about is this symbol. Every yarn label has this symbol. And what this is your yarn weight. And it's not the weight of the yarn, but the thickness of the strand. And I don't know if you can see this one. Here we have all the weights, and they go from 0 all the way to 6, from fine lace weight all the way to chumpy. Crack myself up. All the way to chunky 6. And this gives you kind of an idea of your weight. But please remember, there's wiggle room in these. For instance, if you're using a Simply Soft, it's classified as a 4, but so is, say, Red Heart Super Saver. And if you put them up next to each other, the Simply Soft's a little thinner. So what you're going to find is there's a little bit of wiggle room within these weights. So basically, in my opinion, this is a general idea. But it tells you, okay, this is chunky, this is thinner, and that's what those are all about. And if you go to my blog, I'm going to put the blog listing that I did on this underneath the comments here, and then you can go and check that out. And that gives a whole lot more information than probably what I'm going to give you here, maybe. I don't know. We'll see if we got time. Okay, so first of all, we have our blog weight. The next thing we have is right here. And you look at that symbol and you think, that is downright crazy. But what it is in the middle, you can see your suggested knitting needle size. So if you're going to knit this, this is the suggested knitting needle they want you to use. That's your 10 6mm. Now, you don't have to use that, but that's their suggestion. And then over here around the edges, you're going to see symbols. And what they're saying is, if you do 10 stitches for 14 rows, you're going to get a 4x4 inch swatch or a 10x10 centimeter swatch. So basically, if you cast on, I can't see, if you cast, let me turn it around. Okay, if you cast on 10 stitches on your knitting needle and you knit for 14 rows, you're going to get a 4x4 inch swatch or in centimeters, a 10 by 10 inch swatch, if you use the suggested needles. So that's how you do that symbol. This next symbol is for us crazy crocheters. And see the hook in the center? It's giving you a suggestion of a K hook, which is what I'm using on my project, by the way. And they're telling you that if you single crochet 6 single crochets, and you do that for, is that 12, for 12 rows, I'm looking at it backwards, for 12 rows, then you'll get a 4 by 4 inch swatch or a 10 by 10 inch centimeter swatch. So that's just information to help you. And let me confess to you, when I knit, I almost always make a swatch. When I crochet, I almost never do. When I first began crocheting, I learned to do it by measurements. And for instance, if I'm going to make, say, a hot pad, you know, and I want it to be 10 by 10, I wouldn't make a swatch for it. I would just keep my measuring tape around and then chain until I reached how wide I wanted it, you know, measure it, and then crochet length as far as I wanted it for that side. And that's just a little bit confession on my part. But that's what those measurements mean. So we know what weight the yarn is, the thickness of the strand. So we know a suggested knitting needle and a suggested crochet. And if we do according to their suggestions, what our swatch will be. That's what that information is. It sounds like gibberish, but really it's very good information for you. Okay, so then we have these crazy symbols. Is that just crazy? Every skein of yarn just about goes by what we call the standard washing and care of fabric symbols. And I'm going to show these to you so you can see those. These are all on my blog as well. And basically, you're going to get, the first section you'll get are washing instructions. And that's going to tell you by the very first symbol, this is the yarn I'm using, and it's telling me that I can wash it in warm water. And this symbol is how to dry it. And this symbol is telling me that I can lay it flat to dry. And let me find, here's some of the symbols for drying. I did this on green paper. I was hoping it'd be a little easier for you to see. And here's your drying symbols. See how it's telling you? Here's all your symbols, and here's what that means. And mine up here is the flat one. And so it's telling me that I can lay it flat to dry. Okay? And that's this one is because it probably has that metallic fleck in it, so they don't want you to throw it in the dryer. So I can wash it on warm, and I can lay it flat to dry. And then the next symbol, that looks like an iron, doesn't it? Well, that's telling me I cannot iron. And back on our symbols, I'm trying to stay organized. I really am. Here's all your ironing symbols. And this is telling you different, like iron on medium, iron on high, on low, don't use steam, and do not iron. And mine's telling me do not iron. And that's because the fleck in my yarn is probably a little bit of plastic, and or maybe a little bit of metal. I don't know. I have to look at the, we'll get to that later when we're reading the label. But they don't want you to iron it because it'll probably melt a little bit. Okay? And then the next symbol on here is a crossed out triangle. What in the world could the crossed out triangle mean? Well, that's your bleach. And on this one, you can see up here at the top, we have 3 bleach symbols. It said, do not bleach, use only non-chlorine bleach, or use any bleach needed. And a lot of times on your white cotton, it'll tell you you can bleach it. But for the most part, most yarns, they don't want you bleaching it at all. And you'll probably almost always see the crossed out triangle. But that's your bleach. Okay, so we've got one more symbol, and it's a P. What in the world could a P mean on my yarn? Anybody want to get a guess at that? Is there anyone out there? No one's commenting yet. Is there anyone out there? It says I've got 25 people watching. Well, anyway, the P there has to do with your dry cleaning. Sometimes when a fabric has a fleck like that through it, they would prefer you to dry clean it rather than wash it. And here's those symbols. Dry clean is a big open circle. Then we have P, it says dry clean with any solvent. And then the F says dry clean with petroleum solvent only. So there's a couple kinds of dry clean. And then the X, of course, don't dry clean. So those symbols are kind of crazy, but they're really giving us really good information. How to wash it, how to dry it, how to iron it, how to bleach it, and how to dry clean it. These are all standard symbols for garment care. If you go online and search how to take care of a dress or how can I wash this, these symbols almost always pop up. And it's standard across the board. How to take care of any kind of fabric, because once your crochet yarn is a fabric, and because it's made the same way that any kind of fabric is made, and meaning it's made from strands of different things. And crochet and yarn, basically when we're making something, we're making a fabric. And so it's really these symbols are really important information for us. Okay, so let me get those out of the way. So we talked about yarn weights. We talked about what does this symbol mean for knitters. We talked about what this symbol means for crocheters. And then we talked about how to take care of that yarn and that item that we've made. Good morning. I'm so glad you're here. It's good to see you guys. Okay, now if you're just tuning in now, we've been talking about how to take care of yarn. And this video will be on my Facebook, so you'll be able to catch up and see what all the things mean. Okay, so we talked about, like I said, the weight of yarn. We talked about knitting. We talked about crochet and how to take care of our garments. And that's the information on there. Now, there's also other information on your yarn. And like I said, you think manufacturers of yarn are trying to confuse you, but they're not. They have a thin piece of paper on a yarn skein, wrap myself up in it, to try to give you as much information as possible. Okay, Karen just asked the question, some yarns from overseas and other places don't have this much information. And that's really true. These standards are American standards, but you'll probably find them on some English things also, and Australian usually have about the same. But if you get yarn from, say, a homemade manufacturer, I had a skein up here that was a hank I was going to show you, but anyway, they don't have that information on it. So I am going to tell you what you can do. On your yarn, it usually tells you what your yarn is made out of. I'm trying to find mine on this one. Oh, because I'm looking upside down. Okay, this one says, and by the way, you usually have a stripe across that will tell you your ounces and your grams and your yards. But this one is made out of 99% acrylic and 1% metallic. And if you look on your yarns, you're going to need to look at what they're made out of. And if they're made out of acrylic, this is what I do. If they're whatever they're made out of, if I don't have all this information that's given to us, like Red Heart and Lion Brand and most of our American manufacturers do, look at what it's made out of and then compare it to something else. And if you don't have something at home, Google it. And it's a really, when you get a chance, she says she has some yarn from Turkey. Take what the manufacturer says it's made out of and Google, say you have 50 wool and 50 acrylic. Google that and it'll come up and it'll give you these symbols that we were talking about of how to take care of it. One thing to remember, if you wash wool, it is going to felt. I learned that the hard way with my son's favorite sweater. His girlfriend at the time, who he's now married to, is his wife, bought him a beautiful wool sweater and he spilled some coffee on it and asked me to wash it, so I just threw it in the wash machine and I felted it. It's a very pretty little tiny sweater now. Anyway, so, but that's what I would do. Now, a lot of Hobby Lobby brand, I love this yarn and their craft yarn, and I might be their cotton as well, is made in Turkey. So you could probably compare it with that also. And